Hello, Ben. I can't hear you.
Right. Hello. How are you doing?
Thank God. How are you?
Pretty good.
Family was over and you weren't feeling well, correct?
Family was over and I wasn't feeling well. Yeah, I was a bit
Under the weather.
under the weather. I'm still have a little bit of it, but I think mostly I'm good.
COVID?
I don't think so.
COVID 2024. That's it. I need to have a mask on, even in this conversation right now. I can't.
Yeah. Yeah, every kind of cold or anything, or any kind of symptom, it's all bundled into one thing now. So yeah, it's something.
I was telling my wife earlier today, I'm like, my head's still hurting me. So she said, there's a new strain of COVID. I said, I can't even take it seriously. I'm like, I don't have time for that. Like, I don't know. Like, it's crazy to think about that. Like, that's almost like 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels like I don't know what it feels like. Honestly, it kind of feels like a
bad dream. Unfortunately, we don't have to dive into this too much, but I don't know if you're aware that the courts in Israel right now came out with overturning what the Knesset, the law the Knesset approved a few months ago. So for the first time in history, the Supreme Court overruled this in a like a very small majority on their end. I just hope this doesn't like. It's like the worst timing to be doing this. I don't know why people feel like this is the time to be like going back to things that are causing division.
Yeah, you know what? I was thinking about it. I did see it, and I was thinking, and maybe this is wishful thinking, but I was thinking if this is the worst time or at least a better time of the war being a forcing mechanism in terms of like, okay, so we know there's a war going on, so we know that we can't tear ourselves to shreds because we really need to,
You're that, like you just said, it's very optimistic. My cousin's coming out with his WhatsApp campaign called Shut Up.
Mm-hmm.
And he has all these different soldiers coming up right now and saying that it's causing us more stress basically to come home from the army and then sit down at like meals and hear people still talk about this interior division.
Yeah. And
basically said to the news anchors and to the politicians, if you don't have anything positive to say, then just shut up. Like, until the war is over, that's like what our attitude is. We just don't want to hear anything negative right now. It's not. I don't think it's like burying your head in the sand. It's more that's sort of the kind of spirit that we want in the country. I'll say that it's a horrifying anecdote, but there's this recording of in one of the surrounding towns, one of the towns surrounding Gaza on October 7th.
Mm-hmm.
You hear a recording of cops rescuing this family. And you hear it's two cops and they go to the car and you hear someone screaming and you hear one of the cops saying like someone's dead in the car. And the girl is yelling and the person tells her, we're the police. It's okay, we're the police. Because she's not sure what's going on, this little girl. And she says, Atem im Israel, as in, are you with Israel? And he says, yes, we're with Israel. And he's like, you're going to come with me. And I guess that's the question. Like, she felt to ask, like, are you with Israel? And if the answer was yes, then you're the good guy.
Mm-hmm.
Do we ask that of ourselves within Israel? Are you with Israel?
Yeah.
Because seemingly we've seen the enemies in one another. And that is not very healthy.
For sure.
Okay. Luke, hello. Sandy, hello. And Sandy, sorry, you're unwell. Germs are here to stay. Yes. Hopefully Ben will have a speedy recovery, and I hopefully won't get any sicker.
We'll make peace with the germs.
I see you opened up.
I did.
We missed 2 weeks or 1 week?
A week, I think.
A week. And right, so not last week, the previous week we were talking about Rav Yanai over here, I believe. Yeah, he was talking about right, don't be the head of the be a tail to the lions and not a head to the foxes.
Mm-hmm.
We gave examples. We spoke about how it's the type of animal and not the particular part of the animal. And we spoke how even the tail of a lion is is preferable. And we explained how seemingly the fox is sly and it has wisdom, but with a weak body, it can only go so far with that wisdom. It's only superficial. It doesn't run deep. And as far as like a lion's concerned, even if you're not the head of the lion, there's a sense that you are recognized as part of the whole, and that demands respect, being seen as a lion.
Mm-hmm.
So we got a little more into that, and we're moving on to Tet Zayin. Okay, Rabbi Yaakov. Rabbi Yaakov Omer, העולם הזה דומה לפרוזדור. We mentioned this in the past. העולם הזה דומה לפרוזדור בפני העולם הבא. התקן עצמך בפרוזדור כדי שתיכנס לטרקלין. Rabbi Yaakov would say, this world is comparable to the antechamber. I would call it, let's say, the foyer.
Yeah.
Before the world to come. Prepare yourself in the foyer so you may enter the banquet hall. Okay? So, first off, who is Rabbi Yaakov? We've mentioned this in the past because we've learned about Rabbi Yaakov, but he was a student of Rabbi Elisha ben Avuya, Acher, who we've spoken about in the past, famous rabbi, a great sage that due to his misfortune, due to his experience in the Pardes, in the Kabbalistic worlds of the Torah, the secret worlds of the Torah, unlike his two other friends that were in there as well, he doesn't die and he comes out sane. However, he comes out a heretic. The story goes that he had to deal with a very confusing vision of seeing the angel of God, Metatron, sitting on God's chair. And this sort of brings up in the Apocrypha, Father Stephen DeYoung talks about this, the two powers in heaven. And this is a place where you could see in Judaism, there was some struggling with this concept, but clearly we renounce and denounce this kind of attitude. And Acher, he's known as the other. No longer they call him by his name, but he was a very, very great sage. Correct. And in a certain sense, he's also, he was like fighting back against his grandfather, Rav Yaakov over here. If I said student, I meant he's a great grandson or a grandson of Elisha ben Avuya. But the attitude was that he came back into the fold and wanted to like push back against where his father went astray. So what is this foyer we're talking about over here? In a foyer, we should just talk about what that is because they're giving us like this is very much my field. There's like an architectural example over here of what we're talking about. So a foyer is a place where you're spending a short amount of time. So even though we're living for 100 years, seemingly, which seems like a long time, obviously our life on this plane is like a blink of the eye. And that's why we are calling it the foyer because it's really only a space where you're spending a short amount of time. And you should also recognize that you don't want to be spending too much time in the foyer as well, because that's not where you're planning to settle down, which that could seem a little disruptive. You're not telling like a 14-year-old kid, like, listen, buddy, like in 90 years, you're going to die. So like, you got to start like wrapping it up. Having said that, I use the example of my grandfather, may he live and be well, that he is excited for phase 2. And I think that's healthy as you get closer to that age to start recognizing it, that at the end of the day, while these experiences were fantastic, this isn't the end all and be all, right? Yeah. I'm waiting for the world to come. Just in general, the foyer is good to look at it. I mean, the rabbis in their great wisdom use this as a great example, because it's very much also like a transitional place, right? I go to the foyer to look at myself in the mirror, drop my keys, pick up my mail, but I don't sit down and have the family meeting in the foyer. So it's really also framing it as a place that you're coming and going from in a certain sense. And it's sort of letting you know that in this space, in this transitional space, this is where you're going to have the task of navigating your personality, your qualities, because ultimately you're born into this world almost built, almost perfect, right? There's still a sense where we're constantly working on ourselves, but it's a big challenge because ultimately we're working on our soul, and we want to make sure that, and this is all happening in the transitional space, in the foyer, in the prosdor.
Yep.
However, we want to be able to balance, and again, that's why it's transitional. It's not talking about like you're in house number 1 and you're moving to house number 2. Mm-hmm. The idea is that you weren't born into the world already fixed with like a built house. Rather, you're constantly on the move in a certain sense, and our job is to make sure that while we balance these world challenges, we still want to come out on the other side with a pure soul, right? Without taking on too much harm onto our soul. So we are being told over here that we're in this transitional place. We have to realize that our life is constantly in movement, and that's part of the challenge. But that's also what makes life, in a certain sense, worth living, right? That's where I'm going to be doing the work. I'm going to be doing this work in the transitional space. And we there intend, right? So if this world is like this transitional space, make sure you use the mirror properly before you enter the main banquet hall, the main hall, right? So now you're in this transitional space. You're working on your soul, so to speak. This is the place to make sure the tie is done correctly. This is the place to make sure you don't have makeup on your face, right? So this is the time we're going to use to take advantage of this as well. And this relates back to another teaching we had with Rav Yaakov, which was, if you're walking down the street, if you're walking on the path and you're studying and you're going over the Torah study in your head and you see a beautiful tree, initially you say, if you stop to make a blessing on it, right, that's like a big no-no. And the idea was that you severed, even though there is a blessing for a tree, right? We recognize that this is still God's creation and we recognize its beauty. However, there's a hierarchy, right? I'm studying Torah. I shouldn't be stopping right now to bless the tree. And we were told, at the time, we did it based on this teaching. Now it's just the other way around, that we could see here in the examples that he's using, that he's not talking about two separate houses. Rather, he's talking about one house that's split up. And in a sense, we're going back to Rav Yaakov's unity claim over here. Rav Yaakov says, you are not going to get in trouble for stopping and blessing the tree if it's all happening as part of one unified learning experience.
Right. You're not seeing it as separate from your Torah study. Correct. You're incorporated into it.
So it's same too with the foyer and the banquet hall, right? I'm not seeing this as two separate houses. I'm seeing this as one large house. Now, granted, the foyer is a little more dim, but to get more light, I don't turn on more lights. I open up more of the banquet hall doors, and that allows more light to come inside to the foyer.
So yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just, I want to, so this is kind of apropos of a bunch of things that I've listened to recently, but so we give you a hypothetical question of like, okay, if I see this world as a foyer, that's an easier word for me too, is a foyer, then, and the olam haba, the world, the world to come is the main house, then wouldn't I be right to say, okay, I don't want to spend, like I want to go quickly. I don't want to spend too much time in the foyer. I just want to go to the main house. So I'm going to actually optimize for the main house. But isn't that, I mean, but I can see how that becomes a problematic. So can I I'm trying to dive into something more controversial, but say it very slowly in terms of like if so. What if I don't want to spend time in the foyer? What if I just want to just
Off
optimize
myself.
for the world to come? Yeah.
I mean, but like, I just want to make sure I understand. You're framing like, is there positive suicide, basically?
Positive suicide or positive. Well, if I believe that the world to come is the main house, wouldn't it? Would it be okay if I, sacrifice some of the foyer in order to get there? Not even necessarily of my time, but just the structure of the foyer. Yeah, I
I
can.
will answer that, but as I'm looking over here, number 17, that already starts answering us. Can you scroll down a little more? I want to make sure I'm correct. Number 17. Yeah. Okay. So number 17 addresses this question.
Yeah.
So we'll jump into it then. Is that all right? Or
Sure, yeah. And I'll be more explicit if I don't.
Sure. If you felt like we didn't answer that, then but anyone that's listening right now, no to suicide.
Sure. No to suicide and no to. Yeah.
I mean, there's also a sense, because here we're talking about a world to come and this world, but we could also look at the world to come and this world as happening in the same place and not necessarily different planes. Let's think of a good example. Okay. Think of the synagogue you go to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if you're thinking of that synagogue and you're inside that room, it's a synagogue with books and a place of prayer, and people come there and they pray there. And that's how you guys see the space, right? If I let in my son there, let's say my younger son, with like marbles, right? He's going to be like, oh my God, this place is amazing for marbles. Look at the size of this place.
Yeah.
Now it's both the same world, but it's the same world, but a different reality. So in a certain sense, it's also right now we are very much still looking at this world with the little kid's eyes. And what can I get? What did I learn? What did I miss? All you could assume. And I mean, this is sort of tongue in cheek, but you see, the Buddhist on a mountain, right? And like, it's seemingly he's in this other world, right? Because so there's really living that way and seeing the world differently and understanding patience and appreciation of the little things. And obviously we talk about this while we're learning this Mishnah about recognizing the individual and seeing the holiness in every other person. But if you really, really look at the world that way, then you're also looking at a different world. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's a different world. And that would sort of relate in a certain way to your question of, it doesn't mean I don't have to be here anymore. It just means I need to put on a different pair of glasses and look at the world, or, really give them a good clean so I could see it properly. And then again, that transition could really make it seem as if I'm a completely different reality. Mm-hmm. As I speak about this, it's in a certain way, it's almost not, well, I'm not sure if this is going to follow through, but it's almost like a response to Plato's cave, right? Like the guy gets out and like it's all shadows and he comes back and he gets killed because like that's not the real world. And here we're saying, like, the cave is definitely not the real world. Like, get out there.
So we're still making that assumption, right? That claim, right?
Right. So we're saying get out. It's outside the cave. It's not the shadows, right? So like if we look at Plato's cave as like this, everyone's like, wow, how deep that is. In a certain sense, Judaism. Again, I can't. If I told you, I think it was like last week or 2 weeks ago, we spoke about how. Last week, how the statement of the head of the lion and the tail of the lion and the head of the fox is at the same time. We know Julius Caesar is dealing with what he's dealing with, and he came out with a statement saying, "I'd rather be the king over here than be number 2 in Rome."
Right.
And we're saying the opposite over here, but I can't tell you that right off the top of my head that this timing is correlates to what Plato's talking about. This is just more like sort of.
Right. But is the way that I understand it, the Jewish response will be, get out of the cave via Torah study, but get back in and like you said, install yourself in the posdo, in the foyer, in the cave.
Right.
in order to make it more suitable for the light of day. I don't know.
Well, by the way, I like your translation more, right? Which is like illuminate the cave, or when the messenger comes back, don't kill him. Really,
it's right. So it's living in both worlds. So what I want to what I'm asking really is how does it seems like Judaism at least attempts and maybe is successful in some way of dealing with this aspect of these two worlds, and how not to just be the person on the mountain, right? That's not the ideal. The person on the mountain that's not coming down and not doing anything and not taking over the world, and also not being not having that concept of the martyr that takes the jihadist, right? That acts in this world in order to arrive at the next world. So those are the things that really I'm asking about. Like how is Judaism? What's different about this teaching and in Judaism that makes it different?
Well, first of all, like you said, there's different caves over here, but the cave of the prophet, right? So whether it's Rav Shimon Bar Yochai coming out of the cave and burning people, and we say like go back and chill yourself out, right? It goes back for a year. Or we spoke about, I don't know if we spoke about it here in Bible study, how Chanoch and Noach, and using their names, connecting it to Mechanech, educator. These are both failed attempts of the lineage of Seth influencing the world, right? So Chanoch, there are different midrashim that talk about how he became too holy and he couldn't. The people got scared of him. They couldn't interact with him basically. So God says, like, I'm taking you out of here because you never left the mountain and you can't interact with these people. So this is a fail. And then again, Enoch, exactly. Chanoch. And again with Noach here too, when he's being told what's happening to the world, he says, I want to save my family. Basically, he doesn't think about the whole world. So here too, there's a fail. When God finds Abraham, the reason he picks Abraham is because I see he's going to teach his kids, right? He's going to leave the mountain. More than that, he's going to go to the other side of the river, right? He's going to be the Hebrew, the Ever Hayarden. He goes up the Ever.
Both sides.
Both sides. And he's going to come out of the mountain, teach, do. So, then we also see inside the text, right? Even in Lech Lecha, in the portion, go for yourself, he goes once, and then he goes again and comes back. And the teaching over there is because he wanted to go back to the people he was already influencing in Haran, which through his universal message. And then he had his more particular message for the Hebrews. Either way, here you can see someone that is specifically working towards passing it on to the next generation, making sure that people could actually take this information and prepare themselves properly in the foyer and recognize that there's more than just the foyer. But I also comment about this comment we have over here. I think skipping through the foyer at an unnatural speed would necessarily mean you are unprepared for the banquet hall. Don't enter the banquet hall until you have been prepared and have invited in, right? So there's a sense, whether even if it's a terrorist bomber, right, that you are not only it's an unnatural speed, you're also unprepared, right? Because whether it's you're teaching in Christianity or you're teaching in Islam, you are misinterpreting, you are misunderstanding, and here that would be a clear indication of you not being prepared. So that's also like a certain answer was saying, if you're rushing in to get there, then you haven't fully understood what is being asked of you. 1 second. Black Mask, may I join the stream? First of all, the answer is yes. I would just ask that you put your camera on so we could see you. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I think there's a link inside. Yes, there's a link above that you could connect to. I'm just going to read one more comment over here. It would be determining for yourself that you are prepared, and barging into the room that is not yours. You will not be welcome. Well, I don't know. It's hard to say that, you're not going to be welcome. I mean, if you found yourself there, then you found yourself there. But yeah, there's a sense of that you won't even fully appreciate or comprehend what is being asked of you. You could even say that, forget jumping to death, right? Arguably, you could say, and that's why, in a certain sense, it's apropos. I'm thinking about it as I'm saying it, that he's also Elisha ben Avuyer's grandson or great-grandson.
Yeah.
Hello, Kirk.
Hello. I'm not planning to speak much, but I'll ask questions when I feel like I want to.
You got it. I hope you're having a good day. So going into the Pardes, or going into those secret layers and levels of the Torah, one could say that that is already moving closer towards the banquet hall and further away from the foyer, right? Now, Rabbi Akiva warns them and gives them prep. He says, when you go in there, al tamru mayim. Don't say water, water. Don't assume you understand what you're seeing, because you're potentially not prepared yet.
Yeah.
And we see how devastating that was, right? And here we're saying, Hatken atzmecha b'pazdor. He says, get yourself prepared. Study properly. Because when you move over, if you're going to be disoriented or discombobbled, you could get into a lot of trouble. And we already see that.
Fix yourself up in the prostor is also a good translation of that.
What did you say? Picking yourself up?
Fix yourself up.
Yeah, fix yourself up, right? So we said, like, look in the mirror, make sure that the tie is proper, because we could see one of them walked in without a tie at all. The other one didn't realize it was black tie and walked in with like a Halloween suit. And the other one basically left the party. Says, I'm not interested in this anymore, being acher.
Right.
So here again are dangers of jumping in a little too soon. And I don't know if Rabbi Yaakov is alluding to this, but seemingly that could make sense in our case over here, that he's also speaking out towards his grandfather.
Yeah.
Are these satisfy your questions, or we'll get further in on the next chapter?
I think this next one that we're talking kind of talks about this, because the deeds in this world and the deeds in the importance of deeds in this world and your effects in this world is what's interesting to me. Because again, like, if you see this world as being less real. I'm not saying this is the claim, obviously, but I'm saying this could be the wrong interpretation. But if you see this world as less real,
not less real, less lit, less illuminated.
Lit. Yeah. So is you doing something? Yeah. So can you see your actions having less effect here, or matter less? And then so, but again, would that make you more inclined to believe that you can do something as horrific as killing a bunch of people in order to get a place at the other world? This is kind of like the thing that I'm thinking about. Obviously it's an extreme, and I have sort of answers, but I do want to.
Well, I mean, for the sake of shock and awe, the same effort the mother of the terrorist is putting in, teaching him that it's worth dying for, right, is the same effort I put into my son. It's worth dying to defend this country.
Right. So what's the nuance what's the difference in nuance here? That's what I'm trying to.
I mean, that obviously a lot of that has to do with faith. You could even say more than that. You could say that both of us, both the Arabs and my son in this case, right, are both claiming to be doing Allah's service, right? Mm-hmm. And we're so close and yet so very far. Right. We have ideas which are called v'chai b'hem, right? And now you could argue that during times of peace, I see Jacob's over here. I would just answer to Jacob. He's saying both are wrong, and I'm not claiming this right now either. Well, I'll give my answer, and we'll see what Jacob responds. But generally speaking, it's v'chai b'hem, right? We don't want you to be taking someone's life. We talk about how that how important the Sabbath is, but of course, if someone's life is in danger, not only is it should you drive the car on Sabbath to save him. More than that, it's a commandment. It's a mitzvah. That's what God wants you to do, right? Saving someone's life is as if you saved a whole entire world, we say.
Right.
Having said that, and that is very much thinking again as Jews, as individuals, we want to be living a life where we could embolden life, both for ourselves personally, but our actions are constantly supposed to be helping the other as well, and helping our community, our family grow. Yakobi Mugatu, just wait till the end. Secondly, during times of war, now Jacob could say that Israel has no authority to say that this, like the War of October 7th, is considered, let's say, a milchemet mitzvah, which is like a religious, which is a halachic term. My point being, which I'm not getting into the fact if they're doing that now in Israel or not, but assuming there was a Sanhedrin or a king, and assuming they decided that this is the time of war, at that point, it's no longer the individual. Rather, the individual then embodies the collective. And at that point, your job is to fight for your country and defend your people, even if that means that you die, right? We say the afilu chatan mechupato, even a groom that was about to get married, we take him off and he comes out to fight. But again, those are in war times. 99% of the time, and hopefully in the future when there's no need for any war, the attitude is v'chai b'hem. So we don't want to have martyrs. We don't want to have people killing themselves. We don't want to have people sacrificing themselves. Even the Nazir, the Nazarite, right? Don't even be taking vows that are belittling your life or excluding certain experiences from your life. So I would say in both ideologies, there's a very different emphasis on how we appreciate life. Jacob, before we go on to the next portion, take it away. How are we both wrong? I'm assuming I'm a heretic, so you don't have to worry about that. It's already there. Okay, everyone knows it. So
Ben, you haven't let Ben say anything. So it's not both of you are wrong. It's just
I'm answering Ben's question.
I'm asking questions. I'm not saying.
Oh, sorry. And both are wrong. Sorry, and both are wrong.
So, both are wrong. Like teaching your kids that that we kill for God. We don't kill for God.
Correct.
We don't kill for God. And we don't die for God. And
besides the Levites in the desert, right? Who to God to me? They killed 3,000 people.
If God, so we don't live in a time when we have prophets, when we have direct revelation.
Agreed.
We live in a time of galut. We live in a time of exile. And because we live in a time of exile, we realize that it is not our place to decide, you know what? God said, I get to have Jerusalem. Because God didn't say, I get to have Jerusalem. For thousands of years, we've been in exile, and we will remain in exile until HaKadosh Baruch Hu, until God decides. And that's the difference between us and Yamach Shemam, the terrorists who are willing to kill and to go to holy war, because this is not how we live our lives. We live our lives with an emunah, with faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that if we do the right thing and we live our lives correctly, that He is the one who will return us to our land. And so that's the key difference between Judaism and this horrible perversion of Judaism that Hamas has created in the Jewish people, has engendered since October 7th, which has become, hey, we can be just as bad as these people.
Thank God we're not, though.
Thank God we're not. But guess what? There's a lot of people who are suddenly, kill them all.
Yes. Again, not focusing specifically on the state of Israel, and then a separate conversation, which has nothing to do with religion. Obviously, states in war have to respond in a certain sense, obviously, but we're not getting into that. And like Jacob was saying, The focus of Judaism is v'chai bahem. That is the goal. We're supposed to live through it. We're supposed to, and you could see this, how embarrassed Jacob was with Simon and Levi from attacking Shechem. Even though he mentions in the end that he understands that God giving him the land includes some sort of conquest, but of course that is during prophetic times. But he was very embarrassed with how that happened. Some people even say he saw Dinah marrying Shechem as the option to, like, basically this is where the universal relationship begins, right? This is going to be the 13th tribe through Dinah, the whole world. Obviously that did not work out well. You could see this also when Moses goes out to battle. First, you have to ask for peace. You have to see where you got to have to meet the other one out. So Judaism is really, really not looking into that kind of death and destruction. In no way is that what we're looking for. Ben, go ahead. You wanted to say something before we move on?
I think from what I understand and what the difference that you're talking about is kind of like the ikar versus the fel is like the main approach, the essential, I don't know if you can say also lechatchila approach. So, but let's say just say the main approach versus what we have to do. What is secondary, or what has to be done in specific circumstances?
Well, we're being told, right? Hatken atzmecha, get yourself ready in the foyer. And like I said in the beginning, the attitude is get yourself ready because you weren't born perfect. And only in this life, well, let's start number 17 and we'll get into there. So you wanna give it a read? You know what? No. Jacob, you give it a read.
I was just gonna say that number 17, the really important thing about the Mishnah is that it gives you multiple views. And it allows you to see from different sides, right? So yes, first you had Hatken Atzmecha, and now you have Hu Haya Omer. So same person, Yafa Sha'a Achat B'Tshuva, U'Ma'asim Tovim Ba'olam Hazeh, Mikol Chaye Olam Haba, V'Yafa Sha'a Achat Shel Korat Ruach Ba'olam Hazeh Haba, Mikol Chaye Olam Hazeh. Right?
English as well, if you don't mind.
I'll get there. Which may seem contradictory, right? But he's saying a single moment of repentance and good deeds in this world is greater than all of the world to come, and a single moment of bliss in the world to come is greater than all of the present world, right? And that seems contradictory, but when you consider what he's saying, right? If you take advantage of what this world allows us, right, which is teshuvah u'masim tovim, right, not korat ruach, right, not taking the bliss of this world, right. This is the time to sow, and the world to come is the time to reap.
So, like Jacob said very, very nicely, seemingly there's also like a contradiction over here, right? We're saying like it's all about what's happening here, and the next line, it's all about what's happening there. So, like we said, Hu Haya Omer, this is a continuation of what Rav Yaakov was saying, and seemingly also following what we literally just said, right? Your life here is short, right? So you got to make the best out of it, and we get an example over here of tshuva u'ma'asim tovim, right? So in this world, like we said, in the foyer, in the transitional space, this is when people get to these moments where they need to reach a choice. They need to dig deep in and try to deal with transitional moments in their life. And only in a time like that, when someone is removed from, let's say, the static state, right, of just like being static, now they have to actually decide what they do with these conflicts inside. And we see this also in tshuva, right?
Yeah.
Tshuva is when I'm trying to repent, right? So there's a very big tension over there, and I'm transitioning from the bad to the good in this moment of my life, and I'm trying to grapple with these two different aspects. In moments like those, right, where I could actually grow, where I could actually move on to the next stage, I'm not going to have that in the next world. I'm not going to have desires and difficulties, right? So I'm not going to have the opportunity to lahatken et atzmecha, because once I'm into the banquet hall, right, there's no coming back out.
Right,
And
you're among the guests.
Correct.
You're playing a different game. Yeah,
I'm playing a different game, and at that point, sorry, someone was saying something.
From what I understand, there's a belief in Jewish philosophy that a Baal Teshuvah, or someone who was raised not very religious but became Orthodox later in life, is actually on a higher spiritual plane than someone born religious and observant.
Yes. And
Because the idea is you conquered your Yetzer Hara.
I'm sorry, what did you say, Kirk?
Because the idea is you had to conquer your Yetzer Hara, whereas if you're raised religious, you had that instruction from a young age.
Correct. And we won't dive too deep into this, but I mentioned in the intro to the Noahide Brit Olam review, where seemingly the way the Rambam talks about a Noahide, a Ben Noach, and which are considered Chasidei Umot, and then there's Mechachmehem. There's the people that are considered the wise men of the world. And the wise men of the world, according to the Rambam, are at a lower level because they've accepted the 7 Noahide laws due to their intellect and not due to the commandment from Moses, which is very important for Maimonides to bring it all back to that point. We don't have to get deep into why. However, Rav Kook interpreted this and said that Chachamim are actually on a higher level because they did so, like you're saying, they did so sort of on their own accord. They didn't require God to be telling them this. Rather, they intuitively understood this. Again, this is not everyone agrees with this opinion, but this is sort of dovetailing with what you're saying over here, that the Baal Tshuva, who seemingly struggled and wasn't raised into this mindset, is at a higher step. I would say he's at a different vantage point, one that allows him to see potentially things that me from the inside can't see. The Maasim Tovim, by the way, is generally not, even though there are interpretations, which these are the good deeds, like the good deeds that the Torah tells us to do, mitzvot, and things like that. However, most people interpret this as these are secular actions that have a positive impact on the world, right? So this is connected to the derech eretz, kadmal Torah. This is just acting like a mensch, being a good moral person. And again, if there's like a specific moment in my life where I don't have a rule of what to do, the expectation is I'm going to do the right thing. And to do the right thing, every individual, it involves like integrating their different desires, and every good deed will be dependent on like how it's tailored to me. How do I navigate this situation and result in me doing a good deed? So here too, unlike, let's say, the mitzvahs, which Hashem says, these are at your doorsteps, so to speak, to do you also know how to interact in this world as a good person, as a good agent? And if the answer is yes, again, these are things that you get to experience in this world. You don't get to experience this in the world to come.
So wait, how can you explain again the difference between the distinction between mitzvot and maasim tovim? Like maasim tovim, you're saying,
I mean,
just
mitzvot
has
correct. Well, in a mitzvah, you would have, let's say, not eating the leavened bread on Passover.
Right. So is this like it's those ways of life, or those moral actions that should be so obvious to our way of life that we don't necessarily need to bless over them, just like honoring your father and mother. Like we don't bless. One interpretation would be like that you don't bless, you don't see a blessing when you do something nice to your father and mother, because it's just that is just a basic thing that you should do without.
So that's a very good example. I'm going to be talking about that tomorrow in the Noahide class. But that, for example, so for Jews, right, honoring your mother and father is the 5th commandment, right? Yeah. On tablet number 1. However, Noahides don't have the obligation to honor one's parents. However, within Noahide halacha, the understanding is that honoring one's parents is such a basic moral thing to do that everyone's required to do so. And what's interesting is the examples we have in the Bible. I'll jump on to you in a second, Kirk. The example we have in the Bible of who were the best, who were the examples of honoring one's parents is Yishmael and Esav, right? It's not Jacob, and it's not, and this is sort of in a certain way, it's the Bible's letting you know this is built in before Torah, before the forefathers. Here you see these different characters doing this, and the Gemara gives us also an example of there's two different stories that are similar, but one of them is the rabbis needed a stone for the Urim v'Tumim, for the chest plate that the priest wore, his little magical Wi-Fi box. Okay, and they didn't have it, and this person, this individual, this Gentile, he had the stone, and they come to his house and they knock on the door and they say, "We want to buy the stone." And the son answers, he says, like, "Sorry guys, my dad's napping, siesta time. No, can't do." And they said, "What, are you crazy? Like, we'll offer you this crazy amount of money." "No, we'll offer you double." "Sorry guys, no." And the lesson was that from here we learn how important respecting one's father is. Obviously, I don't know how the story ends with his father being like extremely upset that he didn't wake him up. I don't know.
Why didn't you? This is the time that I'm telling you to wake me up.
I've always said, if this happens, wake me up. By the way, there's also, even there's a halachic ramification, right? Which is, one can't harm his father, can't hurt him, can't have your father bleed. Alternatively, let's say my father gets a tremendous amount of joy wrestling with me because we're both wrestlers, right? So then what's more important, me honoring my father by wrestling him and still making him bleed potentially, or no, not having it? So, ask your local rabbi. These are questions that people need to deal with.
If you're part of the Buren family or the Hart family,
yeah.
So what I was just going to say is, for instance, the distinction that the Talmud uses in, I believe, the Mishnah in Yoma is the difference between Ben Adam L'Havaro and Ben Adam L'Makom.
That's
the
you're
idea
talking about the
is
tablets.
that, well, for instance, the idea is that Ben Adam L'Havaro, that's a mitzvah that deal with being kind to other men as opposed to between man and God, generally are more rational and self-evident and more applicable to Ben Noach, and Ben Adam L'Makom are more applicable to Jews.
Yes, in theory, but we can speak about this more if you're going to join us tomorrow in the Noahide section. But yes, in theory.
Okay.
Al panav, on face value, correct. Okay, where did we stop? And now we're going the other side. Ve'yafa sha'achat shel korat ruach ba'olam haba mekol chayei olam hazeh. So now we're going to give we're going to describe what it's in a certain sense why the world to come is better, which in a certain sense would seem obvious, right? I guess the first portion, what was more counterintuitive, which is you don't want to run to leave this world necessarily, because like you were asking, why not just leave so you could go to the next world? Because only in this world do I have opportunities only in this reality, or my understanding of this reality, do I have an opportunity to actually be in these moments of tension and change, grow, make a difference. So now on the flip side, obviously, pleasure is limited in this world because we have material limitations. And the same thing with the spirit. Even though the spirit is less limited, it's still anchored to our body at this point of our lives. And because of that, we're limited. And obviously in the world to come, there are no limitations. Same thing would go with the change that we have. Like we said, it's unique in this world that we're not static. On the flip side, in the world to come, right, I don't have these temporary moments, right? I have this everlasting moment of joy, right? So obviously that seems like amazing to us, but we can't fully fathom that. But in this world, even if I have joy, at the end of the day, there's struggles, there's changes. I don't have that. And in a certain sense, the world to come offers me like a routine of pleasure, right? Which I'm always in that status. What's interesting is there are some midrashim that say that the reward for the righteous, for the tzaddikim, are even in the world to come, they don't find rest. And by that, it means they still have the opportunity to change and do and make things. For them, they feel, for the righteous, it's very difficult now being in this static space. So God gives them an option to seemingly continue to move onwards and upwards. All right. Moving to, go ahead.
The Korat Ruach. What can you speak about? Just like in terms of the why is that expression used specifically? What are the harkens to? Like just thinking about etymology
of Kor Ruach.
Kor Ruach. So yeah.
Well, Kor Ruach today means being very calm, collected, stoic. Here it talks about like a single moment of bliss, but the attitude is that you are in perfect orientation. Right. So imagine someone being fully confident in where he is, still aware of the situation, aware of the variables. So that person who enters the room looking super calm, or like, the surgeon you want who shows you that his hand's not shaking, that's because he's already played this out in his head. Right. So for him, that's the guy I want doing the surgery, because in a certain sense, it's static. That's what I want in my surgery. I want it to go smooth. I want him to know what he's doing. I want him to have already assumed all the issues that are going to happen. Obviously, for the person who's trying to find the new cure for the new novel disease, right? He's not going to get the opportunity if he decided to become the best heart surgeon, because he's going to keep on working on those classic stuff, right? He's in his routine of bliss. He's in his Kor Ruach land. Someone that is playing with in Wuhan, right? So he's playing on the ground with like the new viruses, and he's gonna constantly have to adapt. And that kind of doctor wants to go back to the prosdor, right? He wants to be in the thicket. He wants to be where he can still make changes and do things and change things.
Yeah, sounds all right.
Let's scroll down. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer, אל תרצה את חברך בשעת כעסו, ואל תנחמהו בשעה שמתו מוטל לפניו, ואל תשאל לו בשעת נדרו, ואל תשתדל לראותו בשעת קלקלתו. Rabbi Shimon, the son of Elazar, would say, do not appease your friend at the height of his anger. Do not comfort him while his dead still lies before him. Do not ask him about his vow the moment he makes it. And do not endeavor to see him at the time of his degradation. Okay. I thought I was going to say, well, he's transgressing, but okay. Well, degradation of here. Beseder. So, Rav Shimon ben Elazar. He has a famous story this is just one of his famous stories, where he was walking outside, coming to a city, I believe, or leaving a city. No, coming to a city. And he sees this very ugly man. And he tells him, man, like, are all the people in your town as ugly as you? And not a cool move, basically. Yeah. And the ugly man sort of gives him a look. He's like, well, how about you ask my maker? Mm-hmm. Right. And this is like a devastating blow to Rav Shimon. Once he hears that, he's like, holy crap, how did I even say that? He feels horrible. He goes to the town. The guy doesn't want to forgive him. And eventually they pressure him to forgive him. This whole brouhaha he had to deal with at the time. He has another very famous saying, which talks about the nikud. The nikud is the punctuation under letters in Hebrew. And he talks about how when you are interpreting a Bible verse, we spoke about how Rav Yishmael had like was a lot more straightforward. Right. Rabbi Akiva would be interpreting the crowns on letters, right? So that's a whole other extreme. So Rav Shimon would say that if there's more letters than punctuation, then you go according to like the simple understanding. If there's more punctuation than letters, then there's like a deeper level of interpretation, basically, and you should dig in deeper. I don't know of like I can't think on the top of my head of like an example of that, but it's just a little tidbit to think about. So, off the bat, we could ask, why are we using these examples, right? Someone angry, someone dying, or someone taking vows. So the sages say that these examples, they are like, they encompass most life situations, basically, in general. There's like a lot of things that map on to these types of conditions, and that's why they're general enough to use as examples. Also, this is relevant to what we said earlier. Here too, you could see moments of like confrontation or stress or tension, right? I have hesitation between different options, and in a certain sense, this is where we have this is our chance to become great during these dilemmas, right? And this
right,
is
it's like it's like dealing with the edge cases. There's a better term for this, but dealing with the edge cases tells you what to do in general.
Correct, exactly. There is something.
Miklal leprat or miprat leklal.
Right, exactly.
I guess, but
no, but in English, there's a term
yeah.
for this though. Right. Okay. Ena klal melamed al prat. Ena prat melamed al klal. Exactly. Okay. So al tirtze et chavercha b'shat kaso. So in general, like anger is stems from like the feeling of like an injustice occurred, or let's say my expectations weren't met, and this is like one struggling with like that's one's perspective of what's happening around him. And once that happens, someone could be very angry, but eventually has to get into this place of reassessment, right? Like I thought something was going to work out. It didn't work out. Initially, I'm angry, but at some point I want to get to that next level of reassessing where I went wrong. And what we're saying over here to the person, let's say I'm watching this happen and I see Ben get devastated right now. This is stressing the idea that I should allow for internal processing on your end. In this case, Ben, you got angry. And I should try to avoid like an external validation at that moment, because we want to take advantage of the point where your reality was unmet, what you were expecting was unmet. And instead of lashing out or being very angry, you can move on to the next stage of, there's the stages of like anger, resentment, and eventually there's acceptance, right? So we wanted you to get to acceptance. And if I jump in the middle of that, I might not allow you to get to acceptance. I might hinder that process. Even worse, in a second, Kirk, even worse, I might try to be consoling you while you're very angry, but you are in no place to be hearing that, right? Like yes, you maybe physically heard me, but I might get you even more upset, right? So let's pretend you're very mad that Sheila took all your money, right? And you're cursing and you're yelling, and I'm like, dude, don't let Sheila get to you. She took your money. You can't let just do this to you. Remember last year when she did it to your kids? Like, don't bother you. And he's like, I forgot about last year. You're right. It's like You're like, no, that's not what I meant. So like, you have to be very, very careful when you're trying to console someone at that moment. Kirk, what's up?
So I'm just curious in general how Judaism distinguishes between being angry at somebody and having general resentment towards their character, or if they're rude to you. What's the difference between being mad at them, like angry at them, and just having general resentment like towards them as a person?
So I think anger is sort of the loss of control, and that is also why anger is one of the main hurdles of achieving prophecy.
Right, okay? It's equal to avodah zarah.
And it's equal to idol worship. Why is it equal to idol worship? Now we have Jonathan Peugeot and John Vervaeke talk about this in fancy language, but the idea is that is an example of idol worship, right? I've completely allowed myself to be engulfed by anger, and now this anger is what I'm channeling all my energy to, and it's leading me to go to a certain place, and that has basically become a foreign god.
Yeah, and it's you
it's
having the expectation that that you having the or not expectation, is you disagreeing with or disagreeing in a certain way with what uh, seems to be the nature of what. Well, no, this is not a good way of putting it.
By the way, you could be saying this, and I'm going to be talking about this also tomorrow with regards to blasphemy. So there's a sense where if you're upset at the world,
right,
in a certain sense, you haven't like Rav Yehuda Leon Ashkenazi, or is known with his Indian name Manitou, the Great Wind. He has said that like it's forbidden to have a pessimistic outlook on life. That itself is sort of blasphemy to God. Like it's not, doesn't mean you can't be disappointed, but it means you have to recognize that ultimately it all stems from God. So this angry person over here, in a certain sense, is also rejecting reality and rejecting God, right? He's saying like, it's not fair that this happened. This shouldn't have been, and not recognizing that nobody, you got to slow your roll and recognize, you got to dig deep, look inside and realize why you're on this path, how this went wrong, but you are still at the end of the day in
right.
God's game.
Rabbi Sachs put it nicely when he said it's not about it's obviously a generality, but it's not necessarily about why. It's not that Judaism is focused on why did something happen, but how can we make it? How can we resolve it? How can we make it better? He gives us an example about the Holocaust, for example, where we're less focused on why it happened and more about how can we make sure it doesn't happen again, and to be in a position where we don't have to have that happen.
Well, what I was going to ask is, does the prohibition on having a pessimistic attitude towards life apply to having a pessimistic attitude towards another human being who's generally a nuisance to you?
Scroll down for a second. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. 1 second. This is the third one. I think if we're down, this is short. So we'll go hit this up as well. And this one, I believe, should be talking about what you just asked, Kirk. We're lucky. Your questions are all very apropos with today. I'm just going to mention something. If Andrew wrote, oh, no, not this. Hello, Andrew. I hope you're doing well. How come Jews say peace at the beginning of the convo and Goy say peace at the end? Do Goy say peace at the end?
I think
Shalom Aleichem and Salam Aleikum, or
Jews, Shalom means hello, means peace, means goodbye. It's all good. So we say hi, we say Shalom when we greet, and we say Shalom when we say goodbye. Outside my door, it says Baruch Atah bevoecha, Baruch Atah betzetecha. You are blessed when you come, and you are blessed when you leave. And then there's a video that explains everything we said in a brief manner. So I guess
5 minutes to 2 minutes is not a bad ratio, to be honest.
Exactly. That's not a bad ratio. Okay. Let's move on. We did Kas. So, okay. Right? And do not comfort him while his dead still lies before him. So first off the bat, you want to have tact, right? You don't want to be running into the morgue instead of like telling someone's going to be okay, right? So there's like physically, literally, the person just died. It's not the good time to be like, well, it's going to be okay, dude, right? So that's on one level. Second is, again, talking about these transition periods or these confrontation periods. This is a moment in someone's life that he could be feeling that the life he shared with like this deceased son, father, mother, sibling, whatever it is no longer part. It's no longer part of like the tangible reality that he's living in, and it's going to become something very abstract very soon, and maybe even doubted by others. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like someone is right now in a moment right now where the person is leaving them, and all those anxieties come out. Like, will I remember them? Will other people remember them? I might even, like, all these conversations I had, they're now, as the person dies, they're starting to fleet away. They're starting to become, at one point, I'm going to forget about these memories I had. And then will it still exist? So obviously someone's in a very, very, very tense moment at while this is happening. He's also experiencing the profound experience of existence and non-existence, right? So, and this obviously relates to the spiritual and the physical. he's not dealing with this himself, but this is going to bubble up questions like, why are we here? What happens next? Who's in charge of this? So again, this moment is a very, very tense moment for someone. And like we said earlier, where the focus should be internal and not external. So here too, we want to, if I come and start telling you it's going to be okay, dude, I'm failing to acknowledge the depth of your transition and the how essential this process is for someone to internally understand. Now, that doesn't mean that someone comes to you and says like, I need help. And you're like, no, deal with this yourself. So again, and we know we have the Jewish laws of mourning. We have the Shiva, which are 7 days. So you could see that even if you're saying I'm totally fine with his death, the Torah says, no. You need to process this for 7 days.
Yeah.
And more than that, don't be praying. There are commandments that you are exempt from, because the attitude is your mindset should be thinking about this and in mourning, and that's healthy to be doing so. And that's why God's saying, if you are doing that properly, if you're mourning, if you're thinking, if you're comfortable in that tension, I don't need you praying in the morning right now. Like, you are praying. And in a certain sense, they say when a rabbi or a wise man comes into the Shiva house, the house of mourning, all rise, right? Because the wise man came in. The only person that doesn't rise is the mourner, because no one is greater than the mourner at that moment. And the reason is because at that moment, he is learning this profound lesson, which is a more profound lesson than all the Torah that the great sage learned. Because he's dealing with, like we just said, there is emotional, there's existential, there's psychological, there's theological questions happening at this time. And the Torah wants you to be in that moment and be present in that moment.
Yeah, it's interesting. It kind of reminds me of what Jacob and I talked about a while ago in the Tanya about how in the Tanya specifically, and in Judaism, there's a sense of trying to give space for certain, obviously for transitions, that's very important, but for all kinds of different emotions or a thoughtfulness to happen. So kind of like the same in terms of when you mentioned, or what we mentioned there are specific times where you can do cheshbon nefesh, right? Like, I don't know how you translate that.
Soul searching, but there are specific, you don't want to do that all the time. You don't want to go into a psychological space where you're always introspecting in this very like over analyzing. In the middle of the night when you wake up.
In the middle of the night when you wake up, you can do cheshbon nefesh.
We said that's the magic time.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Tikkun Chatzot is right. So doing that in midnight, but it gives you it boxes in those. It gives you the constraints how to do that in a controlled manner. So it's really controlled. It really kind of reminds me of this great concept that I learned from Pirkei, that learned it from in the name of another Alitzi Drar that talks about safe fail versus fail safe. Or the opposite, meaning is that you can't really create a system where there is it doesn't fail. Like, that's impossible to create a system that doesn't fail. But what you want to do is to create spaces within the system where there is a controlled failure or experimentation, like a controlled fire, where let's say you're trying to not make the force into like a ball of flame. You do controlled fires. That's the same idea, where you want to have introspection in a controlled manner. You want to have mourning in a controlled manner. Otherwise, it can go into places you don't want to.
Right. So what we're reading over here is really sort of the warning that you'd want someone to have before he enters his modes, right? Like you're saying, like before you enter the mourning house, remember this. Don't be over there. I mean, people talk about this a lot. Like, what do you do if your friend just lost like a child, let's say? So you'll hear mourners will say, what I don't need is you coming over to me and saying, like, telling me stories or telling me like it's going to be okay. What I need is, don't ask me. Make a copy of my key, come into my house without telling me, fill the fridge with food, like do the things that like give me support so I could focus on my mourning and not deal with like, oh, is there breakfast of the kids? Like, a morning we'll find out that, oh, did you just take my kids to school? Because I was totally like, I wasn't even thinking about that anymore. And you're like, yeah, I totally did pick up your kids and take them to school. Obviously, this sounds a little, you have to be close neighbors to be pulling this off. Otherwise, you'll be arrested. But the idea is that you want to be there for them, not assisting them and allowing them to experience that tension. And that also has to do with the blessing we give someone that has experienced death, right? We'd say, Baruch Dayan Emet, right? Blessed he, the one who judges truthfully. And that's the blessing. And like you're leaving someone with that, which is like, we didn't say he did so because he was happy or he did so because he was judging. We just said, we know it's truth.
Yeah.
And be with that, live with that. What does truth mean? Those are moments that you, Mr. X, need to be with. I will make sure that you don't have to deal with your kid whining right now. I'm going to take that again with consent. And then we move on to the last moment over here, which is Ve'al tishalo bishat. Oh, not the last one. Ve'al tishalo bishat idro. And we say over here, do not ask him about his vow the moment he makes it. So off the bat, the moment he makes it, so the literal translation or the exact translation would be is don't pressure someone to keep his vow right away. That's like too much pressure that you're giving someone. Someone comes in right now and clearly he's in a delicate state to make a vow like this, right? And the idea is, as he walks out of like the synagogue making that vow, you'll be like, oh, did you do it? Did you do it? Like, don't pressure the person in that moment.
Yeah.
Number two, don't talk to the person about the vow. And this is because, it's the reverse, really. If someone is trying to get out of a vow, there's technical understanding of how a Jewish vow works. Is because if I said, I'm not going to do X anymore. So if now I want to get out of that, people could help me and say, well, when you said I'm not going to do X anymore, that was that specific case. But you didn't say I'm not going to do X on a Monday or not. So then there's like these little loopholes to allow someone to come out. On the flip side, though, don't talk to someone about those things when he's making the vow. For example, you're very upset right now and you come and say, that's it. From now on, I'm never eating meat again, right? So I could be a smart aleck and come and say, well, when you make a vow like that, you really are only saying it about today. And it's not, so that person will be like, well, that's not what I meant. I meant in all conditions, in all times and all. And now you're like, okay, now he really screwed himself because like he took on a lot more and I wasn't trying to egg him on. I was just trying to clarify. So the attitude is someone's taking a vow. He is in a state. He is trying to either take an extreme route to help him safeguard himself, whatever it is, give him his space. Don't pressure him to do it today and don't start explaining to him how it's done, the technicalities, because best case scenario, he'll regret it. And then then you could discuss it and give him sort of the ladder to come off that tree.
Interesting. Yeah, it's like there's some kind of, seems like there might be an echo. Okay, no, that's it. So it seems like it implicitly there is some sense of when somebody is taking a vow, an edel, they're in a certain state. It's not something that is done, like you said, it's like it's an extreme measure, which is why I guess it's so, I mean, there will be people that very specifically say, bli neder, like not like for everything, like make sure that I'm not saying this because if I am in that space, I have like an extreme obligation where it's a very specific, so.
The power of words.
The power of words, yeah.
I mean, just on that, on Yom Kippur, on Rosh Hashanah, we say Kol Nidre. Yom Kippur, we say Kol Nidre. And we talk about how, Rosh Hashanah. We talk about how it's this blessing that we read a few times in the synagogue, and it says that all the oaths and the promises I made, they should be considered as void, and I never meant them. But we say it every year. And we even say that any vow that I take now will also be for the future will be void. But yet we say it every year regardless, right? We take it very seriously to be careful with how we use our speech and what we say, because we very much believe in the power of words, the power of actions as well. Okay. The last portion over here is the al tishtadel lirot b'shat kelkelato, and do not endeavor to see him at the time of his degradation. So here we also say we're looking at someone, and we endeavor, we are, lishtadel is trying to look at someone, right? So there's like also like an intent over here. It's less about you just see something happening in the street and you happen to look at it, and someone's telling you like avert your eyes. More, it's seemingly like you're spending the time looking at this. So first, we should ask. Here is saying, right, we shouldn't be spending attention while someone is during degradation. However, in Vayikra, in Leviticus, we are told, Hochach tochiach et amitecha. I don't know what the exact translation is in English, but it would be that if you see your fellow man transgressing, you should rebuke him.
Yeah.
But here we just said we shouldn't be rebuking him, right? We shouldn't be looking at him. So like, what does that really mean over here? And I think we could see that there's a distinction over here between observation and like active rebuke. Okay. And in a certain sense, rebuking someone is someone did something bad, and I'm coming and saying, the action you did was bad. And that's what Torah says you should be doing that. If you see someone doing something bad, you should rebuke him. Observation, and they're saying over here, or the endeavor of seeing him, or liroto, it's a lot more deep. It's a lot more personal contemplation and internalizing someone doing something. So you could imagine it more that you are stealing something, or it's known in the neighborhood now that Ben was embezzling money, right? So it's not me coming and saying, don't embezzle money. It's talking about it and seeing it and paying attention to it and having a meeting about it. And that, reflecting on that moment, could create a tremendous amount of embarrassment and even cause the transgressor to spiral down or double down. So it's like, and many times you can see this with children. If I am calling out like bad behavior my son is doing, like he did one bad thing and I say, don't do that.
Yeah.
There's a difference between that and him doing something bad and me now like focusing like a lot of energy on looking at what he's doing. And instead of him being like, oh, I should probably stop doing this, there's something about like being embarrassed. And then like you could see the kid goes into a tantrum, or the kid decides to like become even more reckless because you're watching him do this. And the reaction is like, I can't believe I was caught. It's too late for me to turn away right now. Like maybe the other option is to just dig deeper. So here we're mentioning you have to be very, very careful about that.
That's very interesting. It was a very random, not random, but kind of random thing that pops into my head. A scene from a movie that I really liked because the implication was really interesting, where this is a movie about like a serial killer, but the person that we know is a serial killer goes into a house with another person that he knows, and the serial killer is holding a bat behind his back. The other person doesn't know it, and he's holding the bat behind his back, but everything is hidden at that point. Like the other person doesn't know that the bat is there, and he's not saying it. And there is some kind of sense that, and the serial killer is not sure if he wants to do it or not, right? He's not sure what he wants to do, but he has the bat behind his back. And there's a sense for the viewer that I know that if the person is going to call out the person for having a bat behind his back, then that will make the decision happen, because now it's too late. He's been found out. The bat, like he knows, but if he doesn't call it out, there's a chance that he's going to happen.
it's like observing a particle, right? Like and giving it like a superposition, right? Like it could be either way. It could be here or there, but the second you observe it, that's where it's locked down to.
Yeah, it's a very interesting. I can't explain. I just remember seeing that scene was so interesting that was the implication, and I thought about it. Wow, if he's gonna call it out, then like it's gonna change the whole situation.
So here too, he said like if someone's very angry right now, right, don't call it out right now because you might change the situation, and that's that. And ending this verse over here, this portion over here, that's what basically we're saying, which is like it's crucial to offer someone in these periods the opportunity of self-awareness and
Mm-hmm.
self-reassessment inside, and we shouldn't prematurely interrupt it, right?
Mm-hmm.
We should be sensitive to it. I should just mention that the first time we see this happening is Adam and Eve sin, and God asks where he is. And in a certain sense, before God rebukes him, there's this pause. There's this time that God is sort of giving Adam and Eve to reassess.
Right. Like, doesn't he know where they are or what they did?
Correct. So you could say that's the first moment where you see God's not jumping into their throat and saying like, where are you guys? And it's obviously a sense of not where are you, but like, where are you inside, internally? What are you doing? Do you understand what the point is of this, what the point of this garden is at the end of the day?
Mm-hmm.
Kirk, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, from what I understand, the actual mitzvah of rebuke, there is an idea, not just both in halacha and just in general, that it only applies if the person you're going to rebuke is going to listen. Like, if someone isn't going to listen to your rebuke, there is no actual mitzvah to tell them don't do it, because they're going to do it even if you say it, right?
Right. So I mean,
so like,
that
for
could
example,
be right. So that's like sort of alluding to this right over here, which is going to be like if it's someone that's angry or just has a death or just had a death in front of him, or you're observing, then those wouldn't be categorized as like rebukable. However, also it's hard to know. How do you know if the guy's gonna, how would you know if the guy's going to take what you're saying seriously or not? Again, arguably you could say if he's very angry right now, or he's doing this because we know he just lost his son, then I could have a sense that this is not the right time to do this, to come at him.
Or
Right.
even if they just have the wrong ideology or hashkafa, I believe, if you know that they don't really care what you're going to say, rebuking them is going to do no good, because they're not even in the framework of the right orientation towards God and towards reality. So, like, if someone is an atheist and I tell them, here's why being denying or blaspheming God's name is wrong, if they reject the idea that God exists, what value comes by rebuking them?
Correct. And that's why we say Yad Yamin Mekarevet, Yad Smol Docha. The right hand brings you closer, the left hand pushes you away. And the reason we say the left hand pushes you away and the right hand brings you closer, the right hand is stronger. We want more effort bringing you in. And the left hand is weaker. We want it to be harder for you to push people away, right? So the attitude here also would be, if you know that rebuking this person is not going to be helpful, perhaps take a different strategy and try to just bring him closer rather than calling him out. All right. How many more do we have until the end of the Perek? If we have more than 3, we'll do you 10.
Abuya is like a bunch. Yeah, this is
1, 2, 3.
What chapter
4.
of Pirkei Avot is this?
I think that's it.
Nice. Okay, so let's do you 10, and that will leave. Next week we'll finish.
This is chapter 4.
Chapter 4, and we'll move on to 5.
Okay.
Okay, so Shmuel Hakatan Omer, Binfol Oivecha, very famous. Befol Oivecha al tismach, ubekishlo al yagel libcha. Pen yireh Adonai ve'ra be'einav, ve'yeshiv me'alav apo. Shmuel the small, or Shmuel the little, would say, when your enemy falls, do not rejoice. First of all, he's not saying this. Rather, this is a quote that he says, because this is a known line. When he stumbles, let your heart not be gladdened. Let God see, and it will be displeasing in his eyes, and he will turn his wrath from him to you. Proverbs. So, what are we saying over here? So, first of all, who is Shmuel the little? It's not a what's the PC term today? A little person. He wasn't a little person.
Midget terrifying. Yeah.
So he is, because there's also Shmuel Hagadol. So also, as Ben already knows, he was brilliant. He was super wise. He was at the end of the Second Temple.
Shmuel Mablik.
Right. Even though we always say that they're brilliant, Shmuel the Little was, some say he was called little because he was very humble. Some say he was called little because the only person he was smaller than was Samuel the prophet. So there's Samuel the prophet, and then under him is Samuel the Little. Basically, what it's showing, and they say that he would, if there were prophets, he would have been eligible to be a prophet as well. Famously, he wrote Birkat Haminim, which is a prayer we say in the silent prayer, and this is to rebuke the Christians. However, they asked him to write this blessing, to compose this blessing, because they knew that he had no hatred for anyone, and he's only coming at this from like a very religious point of view, and not because he had anything against specific Christian A or B, more about the ideology. So they felt that like this is the person that should be writing this because he's not biased, which that kind of attitude is going to lead into what we're reading in right now. So ben folovecha al tismachu b'shalo yagad libecha pen yireh Hashem b'ra beinav v'yeshiv me'al apo. So like we said, this is from Proverbs, and it's, in a certain sense, it's sort of, we already have this verse. So what is Shmuel the Little doing by just repeating this verse again for us? And it also seems strange that, like, why would I not like want his downfall, right? If he's my enemy, he's doing bad things. And it's almost like, it's very curious how, if God sees me being happy about his downfall, God might decide to like flip it on his head.
Yeah.
Right. And now not punish him anymore and punish me. So seemingly this requires a little more understanding. So what Kirk was alluding to earlier, here the Mishnah is talking to us about guarding us against personal animosity towards someone. And generally speaking, the enemy over here, what the sages interpret, is not necessarily like enemy, terrorist, bad guy, but rather think of like a political opponent or someone rising to power, someone that is my political enemy or my, like, I don't want to say a frenemy, but like an enemy that I need to deal with on the day-to-day life, right? It's not necessarily an evil person, but someone that
a petty person.
Someone that's in odds with me, with the things I need, with the things I want, right. Someone that's in my way. And the question is, we don't want to be showing animosity to someone like this, right? Even if their actions are misguided or I even have justified criticism towards him. The key is distinguishing between the personal hatred and the ideological hatred or opposition that I have to this person. And we could see this being flushed out with the term they use over here, which is simcha and yagel. And in English, they use it, do not rejoice. So I guess that would be joy, right? Rejoice. And then they have over here gladdened over here, which is like, being exalted or being glad, right? Yeah. So what are these, sorry for a second, an alarm. What are the differences that we have over here? So the way it's interpreted is that when your enemy, like we just described, which is, let's say, the political opponent, when he falls, don't rejoice. Rejoice is a lot more permanent, and the attitude is we don't want you to be permanently happy. Right. When someone right now is falling down, right? Because this is showing basically your bias over here. Now there's a difference though when someone ubechashlo ayageli becha. So basically, if someone falls, you could be Yagel. You could have, when your enemy falls, you could be gladdened, because gladdened isn't constant. Gladdened is, I'm just happy that this specific thing didn't work out for him. So for example, I found out right now that the polls of my opponent have just tanked, right? So I'm going to be glad, I'm not going to rejoice. Now on the flip side, ubehecha shlo al yagel libecha, right? But if he stumbles, there I could be happy. I can't be yagel.
So it's like different, right? It's like different positions of like where, like different attitudes that you can take in different positions.
Exactly. So if there's like a temporary obstacle in front of me, right? So in a temporary, if there's a temporary action or stumble, then we're saying even temporary gladness is prohibited, right? Because this person is dealing with an issue. However, if we're saying that, if not someone falls, if someone nichshal, like we said, right? So which is like a temporary obstacle. If someone has a complete fall, we don't want to be rejoiced forever. You could be gladdened in that moment. So again, just because I know this is confusing.
Yeah.
Someone has a fall, right? Which means he's completely halted. His ideology has been stopped in his tracks. He can go no further, right? We're saying, do you want to be smiling with your friends and be glad? That's fine. You can't rejoice, okay? Because then you're showing your personal animosity towards him.
Right.
Even if he was misguided, he's not evil. Now, if there's a second part, right, which is when he stumbles, right, we're saying even then, definitely don't rejoice, but don't even be gladdened, because on the stumbling, it's not over yet, right? So don't start smiling already when all he did was stumble. He didn't fall. He might get back up. He might still come out against you. So before you start counting your blessings and starting to smile over here, even in that moment, we don't want you being glad.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And there's a sense over here, which Proverbs is telling us, is if your animosity, in your personal animosity, takes over you, it could even be that God at that point is going to be, you know what? I'm going to teach you a lesson. Your political appointment, perfect case in point. There's no version of Donald Trump winning the election. It's not going to happen. So there's no point even talking about it. And guess what? He did win the election. And that did not look well for many, many people who potentially were rejoicing or were glad way too early.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that God now gave Donald Trump the presidency, but the point would be, it could almost be like a lesson, which is, if you haven't realized, and I'll bring this back to Israel. In Israel, there's a campaign since like 1998, which is just not Bibi, right? It doesn't matter if he did good things for the economy, bad things for the economy. It doesn't matter if he strengthened Israel's army. It doesn't matter. Just not Bibi. And you could say that's an example of it's less about him being misguided or his policies being wrong. There's a personal animosity towards him. And plenty of times when he, quote unquote, stumbles and they rejoice, does not work out well, right? We always see that, he doubles down. He does great. We'll see what happens. Again, this is not an endorsement for Bibi, and others could come and say, no, he is like a existential threat. And that's why he's not just like a political enemy. He's an enemy. And that would go back to what we started this conversation with, Ben, which is, are you from Israel? Atem Israel, right? Are we one family, or do we get to a point that we see each other as the enemy? And I think on that note, we will end.
Yeah. Shalom. And so it was a good stream. So